All right, folks, we'll probably get things underway. Thank you for joining us today for a webinar on semiconductors, the small but crucial components that underpin a lot of the devices and products in our lives. We're joined by the team from the Semiconductor Service Bureau, Nadia Court, Livia and Naresh, and later on we'll be joined by another team member, Anna, who'll be here today to talk to us a little bit about what's going on in the world of semiconductors and how S3B may be able to assist you as you commercialise your products or look to procure or design these really important components in your systems. We might jump to the next slide, but before we start, just a little bit about AMGC for those that haven't joined any of our webinars before. The webinar is part of AMGC's remit as a partner to the Industry Growth Program. As an IPO, AMGC works closely with our broad network of manufacturers across any discipline and sectoral capability that is available in the Australian manufacturing industry. AMGC has a range of experience in co-invested projects, national support. We run events and networking opportunities similar to this. We also engage with media and also advise back to government. So under the IPO and Industry Growth Program, we're here to help all of you as participants. Our program as a support agency for the Industry Growth Program is sort of divided into three areas: one-to-one services, one-to-few, and one-to-many. Our one-to-one services are accessible through your business advisor. So if you have a specific issue, challenge, or problem that you're trying to solve, you can talk to your advisor about whether AMGC is the right industry partner organisation, of which there are 6 in the program, to help you solve that issue. It could be as simple as finding a supplier to solve a supply chain issue. It could be working with an expert in the areas of integration and machinery integration in your facilities, marketing and communications advice, or talking to other manufacturers about some of the challenges that they're facing and whether you can learn from them. Our one-to-few events are based around access to otherwise inaccessible facilities, so taking you out into the field and seeing what good looks like. Leveraging the knowledge of the broader group in your regions. So we run things like the AMGC Connect leadership roundtables. And also we look to open up larger experts and knowledge in areas where you might normally be able to access. One-to-many is an example of what we're doing today. So webinars and other major events where we can bring a bit of thought leadership and education into the program. Next slide. So enough about us and onto the wonderful team at the Semiconductor Service Bureau. So thank you to them for taking the time today to impart a lot of the knowledge they've gained over the years between them. Semiconductor Service Bureau aims to support and grow the semiconductor sector in Australia, of which there are quite a few very capable organisations, companies and people within the research field helping grow that industry and those capabilities. S3B can help you and industry broadly in a number of ways, and I won't steal their thunder, but everything from working through the supply chain to finding suppliers, finding people that can help you solve issues you've got, they are the go-to people. So without much more from me, I'd like to pass over to Nadia and the team so that they can talk about the things that you're interested in and the reason you're here today, semiconductors. So Nadia and team, thank you. Can I just remind everyone that if you do have a question, place it in the Q&A box as we go. We will tackle them all at the end of the formal presentations. And if we don't get to your questions, rest assured we will afterwards and come back to you on email. So without anything more from me, Nadia, I'll hand over to you and thank you.
Great. Thanks very much, Tyson and the team from AMGC for inviting us to present at this webinar. So my name's Nadia Court. I'm the Director of the Semiconductor Sector Service Bureau. We are a not-for-profit organisation that has been set up to support and grow the semiconductor sector across Australia. We are funded by the New South Wales government and we have kind of key partners to support us to provide services across Australia. So we are actually a joint venture of the 3 universities here in Sydney, so UNSW, University of Sydney and Macquarie. as well as the CSIRO and ANFF as part of our wider network. We do provide services actually nationally, so we don't only provide services to New South Wales-based companies, but if you are a company that's kind of broader than New South Wales, we can actually provide you with some support services as well. Before I get into S3B and what we do, I thought it would be relevant to kind of just give a bit of a background and introduction to semiconductors more broadly. So we know that semiconductors are everywhere, and they are effectively all around us. So we find them everywhere we look. That you'll find them in kind of everyday items like smartphones and laptops, but also increasingly in an interconnected society, we have them even in our daily lives. Things like washing machines, cars, and light bulbs all have semiconductors in them. And so they are kind of the engines that run our society as we know it today. They also power AI. So AI is increasingly in the headlines. We know that with the advent of ChatGPT, we're all now starting to use AI. And behind every app and model and every data-driven decision, there is chips. So the chip industry effectively has a very large multiplier effect in downstream applications. So it's kind of estimated that I think 630 billion US drives as much as 7 trillion in global activity every year. So we know that semiconductors aren't just a strategic product, they're also an enabler of global productivity, innovation, and competitiveness. As far as the global semiconductor supply chain is concerned, it is a very complex global ecosystem, and they're not just an economic issue, they're increasingly becoming a security and sovereignty issue. And that's because semiconductors generally tend to pass through more than 7 international borders during their production. So it's everything from the development of their designs and the IP that kind of go into the chips through to the manufacture and then in packaging and end use. So it's a very fine-tuned kind of global system. And we know there's been significant investment in recent years committed into this space to deal with some of those issues around kind of global supply chains and sovereignty issues. So over 500 billion has estimated to be invested since 2020. And, key concerns that I suppose I've raised with regards to some of this investment are things like geopolitical tensions, export controls, tariffs more recently, and then also the race for kind of AI leadership. So this is kind of a good example of how chips might pass through some of those international borders. So we've got companies that develop IP that go into semiconductor chips in the UK, fabless design firms in the US that design their chips with US software. They will then get taken over to places like Taiwan, where about 90% of the most advanced chips are fabricated still within places like Taiwan. And then you've also got equipment and materials coming in from places like Japan and the Netherlands. So it's a highly interconnected ecosystem. As far as kind of a semiconductor value chain is concerned, we've got, it's best to kind of think about it as kind of starting in research and kind of inputs and ending in end use and applications. In Australia, we actually have very limited industry. It's a relatively small and nascent sector compared to global standards. So we have very little manufacturing taking place here in Australia, but we do have a small industry here that we are trying to grow and nurture, and that is what our organisation is kind of focused on doing. So in particular, we have some design capability in Australia. Often when our team travels overseas, we get questions about, what semiconductor industry exists in Australia. But we do have some companies that exist, particularly in that design space. and we're looking to kind of support those companies as well as other companies in the supply chain to grow. Now, one thing that we do is we work right across that supply chain. And so one of the things that we can do is kind of facilitate people's greater understanding of that supply chain. And I'm going to pass over in a minute to some of the team that can talk a little bit more about the activities that we can do to support in that space. So a bit about Semiconductor Sector Service Bureau. I mentioned we are a not-for-profit organisation and we're really looking to support and grow the whole Australian semiconductor sector right across that supply chain. So if you are a user of semiconductors, if you are looking at designing your own chips, or if you build an embedded system and you're thinking about taking that through to a custom chip, we are an organisation that can support you. Even kind of extending beyond that. So if you're looking to engage in the research space, or you're in kind of the inputs end of things, kind of critical minerals, and you're interested in understanding what the semiconductor supply chain looks like, we can support you. So our vision is to grow the semiconductor sector in Australia and increase commercial impact, and we're doing that by enabling access to the talent, the networks, the information and the supply chains that you will need to grow your business. Another role that we have been playing as the only organisation in this space in Australia is one of advocacy. So we're really looking to promote our sector. We do that by engaging with governments at the state and federal level, but also with other parts of the wider innovation community, investors, people like ecosystem providers, etc. So I'm going to pass over to the team now, who are going to give a bit more insight to our activities. We have 4 key kind of focus areas that they're going to talk you through. So actually, I'll go back. Sorry. That's kind of connecting the ecosystem together, supply chain, market information, and talent. And so I'll hand over to Naresh, who's going to talk through supply chain first. But I did want to just leave you with, I suppose, a bit of impact. We've only been going now, we launched around 2 years ago, in September 2 years ago, and we've started kind of gathering some of the impact that we've kind of had on the sector. We do have a small innovation fund that people can access. So far, we've supported 10 companies with about 23 grants. So some of the activity that we're supporting is not just companies, it's also kind of academic-based commercialization opportunities. And so we're looking at seeing how we can support the industry by providing small amounts of money to support with things like manufacturing, accessing manufacturing runs, but also things like IP support and grant writing support. So I'm going to hand over to the team now. They can tell you a little bit more about the activities that we provide, and hopefully you'll have some questions for us at the end as well. All right. So Naresh, I might hand over for you to talk through the supply chain space.
Thanks, Nadia. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Naresh, and I work as a supply chain facilitator here at S3B, and I'll go through what actually the supply chain part we are covering here at S3B. We can go to the next slide, please, Nadia. Or who is? Yeah, thank you. So the supply chain is one of the main focus area of the S3B. We have like 4 different pillars. And here, what we try to do is to gain access to the Australian companies across the global supply chain or even domestic supply chain. And in the next slide, please. Okay. So briefly, what we try to do is we identify the needs of an Australian startup or even academic institute who has a product, and then we help to connect them with various domestic and international stakeholders within the supply chain to either make their product or to help them in realizing to finish the product. So that's what we are trying to do, and that's the more of the brokering the part. In addition to the brokering, we also give the technical advice to our customers or to the companies within Australia. And we also provide access to the CAD and EDA infrastructures. So there are, as Nadia mentioned, there are a lot of companies which are solely focused on design within Australia, and that's one of our strong segment. And these companies will have access or need access to EDA or CAD tools for the design services. So we indeed provide connections to them within Australian companies or international EDA or CAD vendors. Sometimes we also try to negotiate a better deal for the CAD licenses because we work with different people within Australia, so we understand what are their needs. We consolidate the needs within the domestic ecosystem, and then we reach to the international vendors to find a better deal for the licensing. In addition to these activities, we also have some fund, which I think Nadia has just spoke. That's called MPW or CAD subsidy. It runs twice a year, and we identify people who need this kind of support. So MPW is for manufacturing your device or a prototype in an external foundry, semiconductor foundry ecosystem. And we also provide some subsidy for the CAD to licensing or using an international infrastructure like cloud services. We are also showing some of the companies which we have supported from S3B in the right-hand side, and we are quite proud of that. The next slide, Nadia. Thank you. So diving a bit more deep into what S3B supports in the supply chain part. So we identified different design needs from the customer, and we try to partner them with the. Oops, that's okay. And we try to partner them with different design house or design partners for customized chip design. This can be either within Australia or sometimes we, based on the customer needs, we find someone overseas. The second part of the supply chain facilitation is the technical partners. So sometimes S3B provides the technical suggestions or help, and in regions which we can't help or areas which we are not familiar with, we identify partners overseas or within the Australian semiconductor ecosystem, so that they can form a technical collaboration and help to fabricate the devices. The third part is identifying the customer's need in terms of the chip fabrication and connecting them with the international foundries. So they're also exposed to not just making a prototype within an research or academic environment, but also in the foundry environment where the mass production or low volume production is happening. S3B also conducts a lot of case studies. So we have done a case study on critical minerals, which are quite important to the semiconductor sector. But we also do a case study on different segments which are useful for developing semiconductor ecosystem within the country. I think that explains what we do in the supply chain part. Next one is going to be the talent pool, and Olivia is going to talk about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Naresh. So hi, my name's Olivia. I work on talent and education initiatives for S3B. And as Nadia mentioned, whilst we're based in Sydney, we do, there are some in-person activities that we do in Sydney, but there are opportunities on a more national scale. So as Nadia mentioned, we're trying to build the ecosystem and the sector. It is quite small, but to do that, we're also going to need talent to support it. So we're doing that sort of through 3 different channels. So by providing funding opportunities, training opportunities, and through events. And I've got some examples on the next slide of ways that we're doing that. Thank you. So one way we're doing that is through career pathway promotion. So we'll showcase semiconductor career pathways through student engagement events. Maybe that's like guest lectures. Maybe it's going to the universities. We've got partnerships with some of the student societies where we'll go in and we'll speak with them about different opportunities. What is a semiconductor? Ways that they can move into the sector and the different applications and the varied careers that they can have. And we'll try and give them visibility of sort of local industry roles that they could consider moving into. In terms of funding, we have a opportunity called the Semiconductor Global Reach Student Fund, which is designed to expose students to global semiconductor ecosystems, education and experimental learning opportunities. So, for example, we sent some students over to Taiwan earlier this year to participate in a semiconductor boot camp for a week in Taiwan. So they got to go and see places like TSMC. They spent some time in labs working on opportunities, working on equipment. And you can actually see in some of the photos on the side, the two top photos, a selfie in the classroom, and there's one of the students we supported, Jamie. She's just made her own wafer, which is just something we can't quite provide students that sort of opportunity in Australia. So they're the sorts of things that we're trying to fund with this Global Reach student funding, so that students can really have an upskilling experience overseas and then bring those skills back to Australia. We also support training infrastructure. So where we can, we'll try and coordinate CAD tool license negotiations. Naresh spoke about that for industry, but we'll also try and do that for training and teaching. And then we also facilitate training opportunities. So let's say that someone in one of your teams is wanting to upskill in IC design. We have an IC design short course, which we actually just closed applications for and will be running later this year, but it has quite a high demand. So we'll look at running that in the coming year again. So something to keep an eye out for if that was of interest. And then we also have a jobs board to connect industry with talent at all career stages. So we'll promote, from internships and graduate positions through to quite senior roles. And so whilst, you guys might not necessarily be semiconductor companies, maybe you've got a semiconductor role, but we're also looking at the whole sort of semiconductor ecosystem that can share roles on this job board. So, for example, we've shared roles for like AI sort of training because semiconductors are directly facilitating that capability. But we've also posted, HR managers for semiconductor companies. So there's a whole range on there sort of across the whole ecosystem. You just need to be a member to log in and A, see the jobs board, but also B, to be able to post on there. So yeah, that's a bit about what we do in the talent and education area. And I think I'm passing over to Anna now to talk to you about our ecosystem.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So just to finalise, I'll close out talking about our market information services as well as our ecosystem development services. There's already a question in the Q&A section, so that may cover and address some of that already, but very happy to follow up afterwards and have an additional conversation if that's helpful to everyone in the audience today. So in addition to the supply chain and talent services and offerings that we provide, one of our 4 pillars is the provision of influential market information. And like all our services, we offer this on many different levels. So in relation to businesses and startups, we do provide a technical consulting service. And there's a very lovely overlap with our host today at AMGC. So if this is something that you're interested in, Tyson might be able to jump in at the end and talk a little bit about how you can access that through your IGP advisor as well. But essentially, any information that can help startups, individuals or researchers make commercial decisions. So this could be providing additional information about the global ecosystem, global demands, or even the local sector as well. We also provide technical consultancy to precincts. So, for example, the Advanced Manufacturing Readiness Facility that is planned for Bradfield in Western Sydney. We're working really closely with the team for Building 2 on the technical requirements for that role. And we also work with investors to help them understand the technical aspects when they're looking to invest into specific organisations and startups as well. So if we just pop over to the next slide, thank you. Our ecosystem services is something that essentially brings everything together. So we and part of our I guess initial why we were set up was to enhance the visibility of the semiconductor sector in Australia, both domestically and internationally as well. So really understanding and drawing out who's already operating within the ecosystem, forming connections within the domestic ecosystem for the purpose of partnership, increasing promotion and visibility, and essentially international outreach as well. So if we just click through, we can dig into some of the details. So a large part of what is visible and what we do is the provision of events and capability building. So we look for any opportunity to bring the ecosystem together, to give opportunities for those incidental meetings for the purpose of investment, for the purpose of partnership and information sharing. And likewise, we tap into partnerships and external events. So we were very lucky to be invited by AMGC to exhibit with them at Industrial Transformations Australia and co-exhibit with them on the stall a few months ago. So that was a wonderful opportunity to reach and provide our message through their networks as well. And if we cross over to the next slide or the next section, Nadia mentioned advocacy and really promoting the sector. So that's something that we try to do on a really large scale as well. So increasing the number of sort of media mentions and helping educate government, investors and companies about the importance of semiconductor technology. We do work across all verticals, so any application of semiconductor technology. And then over to international outreach. Part of our role is not only to promote the strengths of the domestic sector internationally, but start to help domestic companies and researchers be able to form those partnerships that are critical to their success and help promote their products. From the data that we have, approximately the demand is about 90% international for the Australian semiconductor companies. So yeah, we travel overseas and have connections internationally to be able to promote the Australian sector internationally. And then I think over to the last slide, just wanted to share some information about an event we have coming up. So last year was the inaugural Semiconductor Australia event. That was designed to help the capital markets, so investors, advisors, any audience that can sort of activate investment into Australian semiconductor, quantum and photonics companies and showcase them in front of that audience. It became a wonderful ecosystem building event with a lot of government interest as well at both the state and federal level. So we are returning in 2025 on the 22nd of October. We're moving to a much larger venue. So would invite anyone in the audience who is interested to reach out to find out a little bit more information, whether you want to present or perhaps would just like to attend and for that networking opportunity and understand a little bit more about the event. But I think that's all from us, and we might hand over back to Tyson or open the floor to questions.
Thanks, Anna, and thank you, everyone. Look, it's such a broad and specialised topic that impacts so much of what we do and interact with daily. I think the first question that popped up is how can people interact with S3B? There's a couple of benefits to being in the industry growth program and coming to this webinar. If there's specific services from S3B you'd like to tap into, you can come via AMGC Connect. And as part of that one-to-one service that we offer, we might be able to help you with a little bit of funding to go a bit deeper than just a normal phone call with the team at S3B. So my advice to anyone that wishes to tap into that is have a quick chat to your advisor. Get them to send a referral through to Connect at AMGC saying that you're on this webinar and you'd like to get in touch with S3B, and we'll take it from there. If you haven't got an advisor yet, send a direct email to us and we'll work out how we can make that happen as well. And then we'll put you in touch with the right people at S3B. Look, there's a very large question that was posed from Michael at MK Pro. So I don't know how we want to tackle this, but I think we might just start at the top, and if we can pick off them fairly easily, we will. If not, Michael, we might look at coming back to you directly. In the meantime, if other people have got questions whilst we're going down this list, please feel free to post them and we'll get to them as well. We've got a little bit of time. So I'm sure most have sort of had a read of the lead in from Michael. So I'll just jump straight into the questions that he seems to have prepared. Are there current initiatives or partnerships that are focused on using recycled or alternative sources of semiconductor grade materials that you're aware of, team?
So I suppose I can jump in on this one. I would say that no, currently there aren't any initiatives in that space. This is an area that we have just really started looking into and getting a better understanding of capabilities that both exist in Australia, but also opportunities for Australia to be involved in that kind of part of the supply chain. We do know that we have critical minerals and resources in this space in Australia. It's really about identifying what opportunities there might be. But yeah, I can't really say that we certainly haven't identified any initiatives yet, and we are still trying to identify how we can support in this space.
Great. Thanks, Nadia. I suppose that the flow-on question from that is how can recovered gallium and synthesized graphene be integrated in semiconductors probably is a big and deep question that we might want to take offline.
Yeah, I mean, certainly if Michael's kind of interested in sitting down with the team, we can kind of get into kind of greater detail there and see how we might be able to help with some of the questions that they've got.
No problem. So, Michael, we'll come back to you on a couple of those. In relation to his next question around the Semiconductor Innovation Fund, I noticed that is a round type program. So, where does that currently stand?
So we have kind of planned to have that fund go out to the end of it. So we ourselves have kind of government funding. And we're looking to see how we can best utilise our resources for our current kind of roadmap ourselves. So we would certainly be having rounds going, as Naresh mentioned, we've got kind of a twice-yearly program for the MPW subsidy, the grant and IP support subsidy that we also have. We've only run one round of that so far. We are definitely intending to run that one again. So it'll generally be on a 6 to 12 monthly basis, depending on what funds we have available. The details for those are generally on our website. So there's generally an EOI phase that opens for about 6 weeks where we're looking for applications. And we will generally post those out to our members and our network. So again, if you're interested in this, I recommend you kind of have a look at our website and sign up as a member or to our newsletter to make sure you're in the loop on some of these opportunities.
Thanks, Nadia. I'm going to switch to a couple of other questions and then come back to Michael's as we go down the list. So we've had a question from George. And George, so people are posting in the chat and the Q&A, so I'll have to duck between both. Is the session for chips only? Are there avenues for renewable energy conversation? George, yes, there are some renewable energy activities that we're looking at doing in the near future. So just keep an eye on the comms that come out of the Industry Growth Program directly. And if you did want to have a chat more specifically about stuff in renewable energy, with the exclusion of hydrogen, get your advisor to just pass you through to us and we can have a chat there, or just send us an email directly. If it's hydrogen specific, you'd need to engage with AusHETS, who are the IPO partner specifically for that. There was a flow-on part to your question, which is, can we manufacture semiconductor material in a wing or a part of some sort of Australia? I'm not sure what your question's going to there, George, so maybe just repost it if you wouldn't mind. However, ducking back to the other side, Joseph, you've posed a question about the critical minerals that AMGC currently works with or has access to. We have a large network of manufacturers that are doing a large array of materials in many different forms. So that's a big question. If you're looking for something specifically, I would suggest again that you get in touch with us with a little bit more detail. But whether it's powdered alloys or particular precursor materials or particular requirements for something that you are doing, let us know a bit more detail off the chat box and we can have a look at how we can help you. I'll now quickly duck back to Michael's questions. I think the circular economy and sustainability question we've sort of covered, so we'll leave that one be. Collaboration and ecosystem building. So you've posed a question about S3B and how you can work with them to connect yourself and others. I think that's exactly what S3B do, and I don't want to answer on their behalf, but I think a quick conversation and getting in touch with them might prove valuable to you. Anna and Nadia, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think that would be a fair assumption.
Yeah, no, look, the way that this would generally work, Tyson, is we generally will sit down and have an initial conversation with, either one of the members of the team or a few members of the team, depending on, what we know about your company and your needs before we actually meet with you. Generally, the way in which we work is kind of, we'll have an initial meeting, try and understand your needs and requirements, and that might be, a very light touch meeting. If we identify, for instance, that there are kind of technical needs and requirements that you have, we can then bring in, we're very lucky, we've got a very multidisciplinary team, both non-technical and technical experts on that team. So between us, we can generally cover off on quite a bit of support needs. Like if you have very detailed technical questions, we will sit down and try and understand what those needs and requirements are. If we can't answer that within our own team, we can then make the connection to our wider networks. And certainly as far as matchmaking is concerned and identifying potential partners, that is a big part of what Naresh does in that supply chain space. So generally we'll try and identify what your needs are and then make the relevant introductions as required.
Great. And to back in what Nadia said, if S3B don't know of a manufacturer or material supplier that exists and AMGC doesn't, that might be a market opportunity for you to fill. So again, AMGC also has a broad network, and we do have done and will continue to work with nanomaterial producers locally. So between the two of us, you are talking to probably the right people, or are talking to the right people. And because S3B is part of AMGC Connect's program, we can definitely help you and support you also with other services that are available monetarily as well through the IPO program. Market access, I think that's probably something that I'll pass over to you, Nadia and team. There are amazing opportunities for Australian manufacturers to collaborate in global supply chains at a helicopter level, but I'll let you go into the detail of where those opportunities may exist.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose looking there at that question again, trying to identify exactly what capability an Australia supplier would bring to the market, we can help to identify what the current market opportunity looks like, who are the existing players globally. As Anna mentioned, we also represent the ecosystem globally. Just last week, Anna was in Taiwan for Semicon Taiwan, where there are people represented globally across that kind of manufacturing supply chain. And so we are looking to build networks in places where we think there are opportunities for Australian suppliers, particularly in places like Taiwan, Japan, Korea. They are areas that we are beginning to explore for some of our companies.
Great. Thanks, Nadia. I think I've addressed the vast majority of questions that are there. So if anybody else does have any questions, we have some time. What I was going to ask Nadia is we've all heard and lived through semiconductor shortages and the issues that plagued both locally and abroad. What is the biggest opportunity for Australia in that whole sector that you foresee in the near future or further down the path?
That is kind of a great question. And how long is a piece of string? I think
17 minutes is the piece of string, Nadia.
17 minutes. Often one of the things that gets raised is that, I mentioned earlier in my presentation, there's been significant investment globally in the semiconductor ecosystem, particularly looking at onshoring of manufacturing. But I also showed the fact that we have an incredibly complex supply chain. So it is actually very unlikely for any one country to have that whole supply chain end to end in country. So we need to recognise that, first of all, it is a global industry and there is opportunities for Australia to play in different parts of that value chain. I think it's probably unrealistic for us to play in places where high volume wafer manufacturing that happens in places like Asia. It's hard to see how we will be able to compete as a country in that space, given we have a real lack of an ecosystem there. However, there are opportunities in other areas. We have great systems engineering companies here in Australia. There are opportunities for Australia to kind of grow some of its ecosystem, looking at opportunities for designing custom chips to meet the needs of some of those end user companies. There are opportunities in that design space to, you don't necessarily need the huge investment in infrastructure. The largest company in the world last year, and probably I think still maybe remains NVIDIA. NVIDIA is a fabless semiconductor company, so they don't actually do their manufacturing in country. They design their chips and get them manufactured offshore. So that's something to kind of keep in mind, that sometimes we don't actually need to manufacture the chips themselves. We can kind of partner with other countries. That said, I would say Australia as a country hasn't really thought through what sort of capability we do need to have in country. That is one of the things that we are doing as an organisation, engaging with both state and federal governments to kind of understand what sort of supports government can potentially provide here. We saw through COVID a real problem in accessing chips in our supply chain. Some of the electronics manufacturing companies that I spoke to were having trouble sourcing very standard components. There was a black market for chips. You couldn't necessarily trust some of the chips that were coming into the country. And so that is something that we're kind of advocating on behalf of the wider sector, as well as to kind of think about with our place in that kind of global supply chain. It's unlikely we're going to be able to manufacture some or all of these components here in Australia. And so how do we kind of guarantee that supply? And perhaps it's looking at other areas of the supply chain that we can kind of quid pro quo if we can kind of supply great designs, great end user applications, critical minerals, that might be something that kind of supports us to build relationships with friendly countries overseas and guarantee that supply.
That was an 8-minute answer, so you did well. How long's a piece of string?
How long is a piece of string? Exactly.
So thank you for that, Nadia. And I think I'd just like to touch on Semiconductor Australia, and AMGC is currently in discussions with the team about how we could get some IGP participants along to the event to benefit both sides of the discussion. So if there is anybody that is interested, once you go and have a look at the Semiconductor Australia event, please email us so that we can gauge interest. We will be putting out some information about how you can attend and how you can get involved. And we'd like the S3B team to have access to a few people that we probably don't even know ourselves that are kicking around in the background looking at this industry. Michael, it seems like you've well and truly got a lot of questions and would benefit potentially from going along. So thank you for bringing that up as well, Anna, and we look forward to working with you on that.
Excellent. I should just flag that I know we're a semiconductor bureau, but we work across all verticals and across the whole supply chain. So materials, R&D, but you don't necessarily have to be a semiconductor company to benefit and attend. So, we're lucky enough to be able to work with any company that designs, makes, or even uses a semiconductor in their product. So there's a lot of companies that produce electrical equipment for specialist applications, and we work across sort of communications, quantum, electrical cameras, microphones. It's pretty broad, our audience. So yeah, would encourage a wide audience to find out more, even if you don't feel you fit into the banner of a semiconductor company strictly.
Excellent. Look, there are no other formal questions coming through, but Nadia, Olivia, Anna, and Naresh, whilst we've been chatting here, was there anything that you would like to add before we sort of wrap up and give everybody back 10 minutes in their day? No?
I don't think so. As you said, Tyson, if people are interested in learning more about the semiconductor industry, the semiconductor supply chain, and either where they might be able to benefit from our services or where they might be able to contribute to that semiconductor value chain, we're very happy to have that discussion. So grab our details from Tyson, get in contact, and we're very keen to kind of engage with you more broadly.
Great. And I think George just put a comment up saying he's looking to replace copper windings with semiconductors. That sounds like something that you guys would be more than happy to chat to him about. So George, make sure you get in touch with us. Look, I'd like to thank you for taking the time out of your day to present to the cohort today. I know it is over lunchtime, so none of you have probably eaten, and you're probably gagging for a sandwich. So again, thank you to everybody that joined the call. Thank you to the team from S3B, and we look forward to seeing IGP cohort on our next webinar. And Nadia and team, we look forward to continuing to work with you. Thanks very much. Enjoy your day.
Thanks very much. Bye, everyone.